Tonight, Eobard Thawne shows that the best way to make friends and influence people is through manipulation and gaslighting them. Gotham by Midnight pretends that an 1800s ghost would be suave and debonair instead of smelling like sewer water. And Superman has Lois Lane finally learning the secret of Clark Kent's double life, and it'll probably be a front page story by this afternoon. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 204 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and it's a fifth week. Woo! Hooray! I'm so happy. I'm sorry if I'm not exactly too enthusiastic this episode. Nothing is wrong inherently, emotionally. I'm actually quite chipper, all things considered. However, for anyone who paid attention in the last week's episode, I specifically said that I had a vacation over the weekend, and so I would actually have limited amount of time to film this episode, but that was okay because there were only 7 comics, because once again, it's a fifth week. However, what I failed to take into account, what I failed to remember, is that in recording this, beforehand, in the same day, I would have to wake up at 5 in the morning, after about 3 hours of sleep, and then drive 7.5 hours, pretty much nonstop. And then the moment I get home, I needed to start recording. So I'm about as close to functionally dead as most coma patients, and I am propped up entirely by a dedication to the schedule of this show and like 15 pounds of caffeine. Like pure, not like, oh, you know, I drank something and I weighed 15. Like, no, just caffeine. The drink was much more. So, if in this episode I say something stupid, something that doesn't make sense, perhaps I jumble my words up a little bit, I'm not my normal eloquent self, please forgive me. I couldn't care less. But it's a fifth week. That means a few comics came out, including a bunch of annuals. So let's take a look at what we got this week. In the order I'll probably be doing this show in, we have 2 non-annuals, Superman and Batgirl 42. Then we have a bunch more annuals of Batgirl Annual number 3, Deathstroke Annual number 1, The Flash Annual number 4, Gotham by Midnight Annual number 1, and Lobo Annual number 1. So check those out. Those will be in the episode, which is starting right now. Superman number 42, written by Luen Yang, art by John Romita Jr. So last issue we had a whole thing with this person who was trying to snitch on something big, and they needed Clark and Lois and all them to help out, and then they got out after possibly being captured. It's a whatever. Point is, this issue opens up outside Metropolis. Jimmy and Clark are looking around, and Clark's like, all right, my superhero, I don't hear any heartbeats nearby. We're totally alone. And they go over to this woman, Condiza, who basically says, all right, tell us what you need to say. And she says, all right, I work for a group called Hoarder, H-O-R-D-R, and whereas Lex Luthor is a company that like makes his stuff from chemicals and rocks, that's how he gets his money, Hoarder deals with technology and information, and as such they have blackmail on like pretty much everybody. That's just what they do. They trade in secrets and information. And it basically says, like, yeah, you can use that to buy whatever you want, no big deal. And Condiza says, yeah, I used to work with them. I don't anymore. I got out after some stuff happened. And then as she's explaining this, Jimmy notices movement in the tree line. Turns out it's a bunch of robots, so of course it doesn't have heartbeats. They're also ninjas. They all have swords. You'd think robots would have, like, I don't know, lasers, but Clark's puts himself in between the robots and the other people, and then just starts throwing them all together, starts getting into a big fight. Condiza is impressed and just like, wow, okay, yeah, no, those came from Hoarder. They are essentially technological zombies, but like actual corpses that have been turned into, as she says, solidified shadow. And Lois is like, okay, all right, Jimmy Condi's get out of here. I need to talk to Clark for a minute here. And then just like, hey, all right, Clark, first off, I apologize for calling you a coward last issue. Secondly, you're Superman. You're Superman. And he's like, what? What are you talking? She's like, I noticed that Superman was getting very slow and like he's starting to get hurt more, and as soon as I start putting those pieces together, I look over and I see you with bruises all over your face. And Clark's like, oh, that was a batting cage. I got hit with a bunch of baseballs. And she's like, no, Clark, seriously, don't treat me stupid. And as he's fighting all these ninjas, his clothes got torn up, so Lois just starts literally ripping his clothes off to expose the very obvious blue suit underneath. And he takes off the glasses and he's like, all right, Lois, let me explain. And it's just like, why? Explain why. You're so honest and whatnot, and now you're just not. And he's like, it's more complicated than that. I just wanted to have a normal life. And she's like, oh, why would you want to be normal? You're Superman. It's like, because I do. Like, I don't have to justify that. So she asks who else knows, and he says Jimmy, and that's it. And he's like, yeah, of course Jimmy knows. So at that point, Candice, because, she's standing right there, she also knows as well. And Candice's like, oh, by the way, I also knew, because Hoarder Root, who is the leader of the group, also knows. He's the one who's been texting you, Clark. And he's like, oh, okay, so I gotta go take down that guy. So Candice says that, hey, I know where there's a secret campus. We're going to go there. I'll lead you. But, like, we got to make a few pit stops. We can't just go straight there. It's more complicated than that. So we go to Gotham City to the Toy Master Game Shop, where she passes over a mask and says, this is an ID badge. I'm going to need 3 more for Jimmy, Lois, and Superman. And he's just like, yeah, no problem, but I can like create the thing, but I can't make the software inside that makes them actually real ID badges. And she's like, don't worry about that, I can handle that. So they do a weird bit here where like Jimmy and Candice are flirting, but like she's very standoffish about it. Like, he's like, oh, hey, so you know how to code? And she's like, what, are you impressed by that because I'm a brown-skinned woman? Is that it? And he's like, what? No, what? And she's just pushing his buttons, but like, I don't know how to take that whole scene. So he comes back with the mask and says, all right, here you go, code this. First off, that's already just an insane panel, but then it follows up with her holding the mask in front of her and saying 011011, and the mask is just taking in the code verbally. And she's like, wait, what was that? And Candice says that apparently that's her superpower, is she can just code by machine binary. So we go to downtown Metropolis. They're waiting for a bus. Turns out this is a magic school bus that is driven by Hoarder, and the bus emits a holographic field, and you can't get on without wearing one of these masks. So they put on the mask, they get on. The bus goes off of a cliff, but then just continues like flying and or driving up into the sky. Lois and Clark are like, oh my god, that's crazy. And Clark says, hey, by the way, I wanted to say thank you. Like, I am glad that I'm able to open up to more people about the two halves of my life. So that's something that has been bothering me for a while, and I'm happy that you are in on that. And she's just like, hey, look, I used to think of you as a partner and a friend until yesterday, so we got stuff to talk about. But either way, they are arriving to the Hoarderplex, which I cannot overstate that, like, this thing is also called the Hoarder Bus, and it goes to the Hoarderplex, where they'll find Hoarder Root. Naming is not their strong suit, but they arrive at this huge campus in the sky, and they comment like, wow, there are tons of people here. And Candice says, yep, all of them are being blackmailed. Every single one of them, blackmail. Don't like that's the only reason any of them, well, some of them may agree, but they also have blackmail on them. So Jimmy gets a coffee, because, of course, this place has coffee. And then a giant hologram of Hoarder Root appears in the sky. And Candice says, oh, it's the morning announcements. We have these every day. And Hoarder Root says, hi, everybody. Gonna have to skip the morning announcements today because 3 people who are not supposed to be here are here. And then Lois, Jimmy, and Clark look around and it's like, wait, where'd she go? Ah, crap, she set us up. So they're surrounded by robots. Clark grabs hold of Jimmy and Lois and super speeds out of there, hiding in a back room. Jimmy asks Clark, like, hey, what are you doing? He says, oh, I'm looking around with my x-ray vision. I don't see Candice anywhere, but I do see this. And he punches through a wall, and as they come in on the other side, it's just a bunch of TV and computer screens, all with earlier panels of Superman throughout the New 52 thus far. And just like, oh, these are more than just videos. There's bank account statements and my family histories, and it's implied that it's also for like everyone else, but it's literally only ever Superman you see on screen. So at that point, Hoarder Root comes up and says like, yeah, it's alien technology that can store zettabytes of information. We have all the world's information here pretty much. And he's like, yeah, hey, Clark, nice to meet you. I've been the one talking to you over text. Thanks to Candice here for introducing us. And Lois is like, we were all played by you. So at that point, Hoarder basically says like, all right, well, consider everything that I put you through there an extended job interview. I want you as part of my team, Superman. And Superman's like, what? And he's like, yeah, we're a new thing. We're gonna like fix the world by using blackmail. And Clark's like, I don't think I want to be a part of that. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I can kill you, I can hurt you and like people you love and all that. And then Superman just takes off his jacket again, shows the Superman outfit, and they bring in the Hoarder security that then goes and attacks Superman. He just starts clomping through it, and after like, I swear to God, 30 seconds, like he barely tries fighting at all, and then he just turns to Lois and Jimmy and says, hey, I'm gonna do a solar flare, I'm gonna take this whole place out, you guys better bail. And he says he's got like 10 minutes tops, so he wants them to go out and warn the rest of the people so they can also evacuate. We see Jimmy sneaks up on Candice, and she immediately like flips him around, just being like, oh, it's you. I'm so happy you're alive. I thought for sure you were going to be killed. And he's like, yeah, no thanks to you. What's up with that? Like, why do you betray us? And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, but like, I've got my own secrets too. And he's like, okay, well, if you want to make it up to us, help us solve this situation. We then see Lois sneaks up behind Hoarder Root and just smashes him in the head with a steel pipe. And his mask breaks, and it reveals on the inside is a kid. It doesn't look like a kid, but Lois says, you're just a kid. And as she's like holding him up, saying like, all right, well, you're going to tell me everything I need to know. Hoarder apparently is not the kid. It's something that was using the kid's body as like a host. And he just starts disintegrating it, saying like, oh, it's no longer useful, so I am discarding this. So we go back to the big hologram in the sky, announce Jimmy's face, and Jimmy says, oh, is this thing on? You all need to leave. This whole place is going to blow up. And the crowd's like, what? Nah, man, this place is like super secure. Like, there's no way it would blow up. But then one of them points out like, but wait, how did they get access to the holographic feed if it was so secure? And then they all start screaming and running. So Superman starts going Super Saiyan. He does his solar flare thing. We see people taking off in the hologram buses. And then a mysterious shadow figure shows up behind Superman as he's doing a solar flare, walks right up to him, says, Superman. Superman's like, who the hell are you? And then grabs hold of him and seemingly just drains off the rest of the solar flare energy. And Superman just falls down to the ground. He still blew up the facility, so I don't know what this accomplished, but then the figure just walks away. The other three come in. They were hiding under some steel or something. They grab hold of Superman and just like, man, why does he keep getting beat up? This is crazy. So they drag him out on a sheet of metal, get into one of the buses. Once again goes 011, 011, and the bus turns on, and they fly away as the last of the explosions happens on the Hoarderplex. And Lois says, oh, please, Clark, please be okay. That's the issue. That's literally all of it. Okay, first and foremost, John Romita Jr. on the art. I have nothing to back this up, but it feels like, as I'm reading it, the first pages are pretty decently polished, and it just gets worse and worse and worse until we get to the solar flare pages, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm actually supposed to be able to tell if this thing is humanoid, or like, if I'm supposed to be able to tell anything about it, because the art is so ill-defined that it's just like a blob at that point. So, not good. I guess there's nothing wrong with Candice's power of being able to just like speak code. It just seems silly. You know, like in a world where all these other DC heroes exist, there's nothing wrong with this specific power, but the way it's performed of just saying zeros and ones, and it's not even like that special of a text bubble either. It's just a normal like speaking with a little bit of flair on the visuals. It's, I don't know, it needed to be spiced up a little bit. Make me think Brainiac. Make me think that this is like an actual data transfer instead of just literally saying 01100101. Like, come on. As for Lois knowing the secret identity, I mean, we've known this is the case because this is set in the past relative to everything else going on in Superman's story. I think it's intentional though, because we still don't know how she's going to betray him, how she's going to release it. But you know, it's there. I don't know. I'm trying really hard to find something positive about this, but I really do think that this storyline is just kind of, it has a message in mind, but it doesn't have a compelling story to tell that message. Like, clearly there's this thing about, oh, all this information we have online and our what if somebody controls it all and da-da-da. But like, the story itself is just kind of the bare bones to get to that point. It's not compelling in its own right. So I'm going to say this is a 6.5. 6. Nah, it's a 6. I can't go with a 0.5 on that. And hopefully we'll get something better out of it before the arc ends. Batgirl number 42, written by Cameron Stewart and Brendan Fletcher, art by Babs Tarr, with breakdowns by Jake Wyatt and Lacombe, one of the two. So last issue was basically two different stories where Livewire was an issue, just we have Livewire now, and because Babs' dad is now Batman, and he doesn't know that she's Batgirl, he's trying to bring her in for vigilantism. So we get a little recap of that in a single panel here as we see Gordon is facing down Babs and saying, all right, you're under arrest, Batgirl. And she's like, hey, look, we got to go take down Livewire. I know you don't want to do this. Let's go just take care of the criminal thing. And he's like, you got 5 seconds. And so she just takes off sprinting into a construction zone. She only gets 5 seconds away, and then Gordon just lands in front of him and is just like, all right, stop, Batgirl. She tries throwing a punch, but it's a metal suit. It doesn't do anything. But he does open up the suit and then steps out. And Babs is like, this isn't what Batman was like. Stop it right there. He's gone. I'm Batman now. And Babs is like, okay, but like, I really can't go to jail. This is a very bad time for me to go to jail. And he's like, look, I shut down the suit. I stepped out of it. That gives us a little over a minute to be able to talk here. So, look, I'll make it clear for you. My employers want to be the only game in town. They want everything in terms of this Batman business to be done by the book, legally, by empowered people who have that ability to do this under the law. You do not have that. None of you Bat kids have that. Therefore, they want me to bring you all in. And look, I know you must have a normal life. Whatever that is, go do that, because that's the only way you're going to be safe here. And then Babs has a flashback to when she was trying to enroll in the police academy or whatever like that. And her dad comes in and says, like, no daughter of mine's going to be doing that. Not because I don't think you're going to be good, but this is how I can keep you safe. So it's a little father-daughter thing. And Batman's like, okay, all right, our minute's almost up. I got to get back in the suit. They're going to have a signal light on this guy, so you got to leave. And she's like, oh, but I can't. And he says, run. So she takes off. She gives one last look back and then disappears into the construction site. Sometime later, we're watching a YouTube video of Leslie Willis, aka Livewire, before she got her powers. Turns out she made a machine to control the electrical grid of all of Metropolis. And she's like, and by flipping it in a specific order or whatever, I'm going to spell out a message that's very offensive to astronauts up in the space station. And as she's about to flip it on, all of a sudden there's a red and blue blur that flies in, steals the machine. And she's like, what? What was that? Someone took my machine. Ah, screw it. I'll still just shut down power to the whole city. And as she flicks the lever, it gives her a massive electric shock and she becomes Livewire. So we see, watching this video is Frankie and Babs. And Frankie's like, yeah. And then Batman and Superman put them in a thing, or maybe it's Babs saying that. Regardless, put him in a containment field, but then the Hook cult managed to get her out somehow. And now she's free. She's going to be looking for payback. So Frankie says, hey, all right, I'm in, let's stop her together. And Babs is like, I don't, look, you messed up your shoulder during that last one. I just don't want you getting hurt. And she's like, hey, I saved your life again. I'm not letting you go out there without backup. So Frankie pulls up a computer like, all right, we just got to figure out exactly where in Metropolis or Gotham or wherever it's going to be. It could be anywhere. And Babs like, she's going to be at the power plant. It's pretty obvious she's going to be at the power plant. And then Frankie just gets a ding of like, okay, yeah, she's at the power plant. So be it. So Babs gets all suited up and she's like, yeah, okay. If the other Batman goes in there because the ping just came in, he's going to be shut down immediately because his suit is all electrical. So I have to go in there and be able to save him. I need to then contact, what's his name? Kadir, I believe. So we see that he's packing up all of his stuff in whatever lab he's in. Batgirl just Batman's in, says something, frightens him, just almost drops his boxes. And then he's like, oh, sorry, I was trying not to startle you. Anyway, I need you to make me something that can contain electrical energy. Also, are you leaving? Are you moving? Because I thought we were setting up a little will they, won't they between us. And he's like, oh, what? Oh, okay, I'll get you just the thing. And he starts rooting through boxes and saying, yeah, I got a job offer. It's fantastic. I'm going to be working at Fawkes Technologies right under Luke Fawkes. And Batgirl goes, wait a minute. I'm pretty sure that I mentioned that last issue because they could get some money from them. Hint, hint. So we cut over to the power plant. Batman's already fighting against Livewire. It's not going well really for either of them. Batman's using sonic weapons, which is knocking out Livewire's defenses, but then Livewire just gets more pissed off and fries the suit as Gordon's inside of it. So as that's happening, Livewire's like, okay, that took a lot out of me in order to make that happen. I just need to recharge for a minute. So she starts idly taking in electricity from the power plant, to which Batgirl takes advantage, kicks her in the chest, and goes over to Gordon saying, hey, can you get out of the suit? And he's like, nope, I am trapped in here. This is a metal coffin. So she remembers the blueprints somehow immediately, pulls a release hatch on the back of the head, and Gordon's now out. And he's like, all right, look, we don't have time for anything else. What's your plan? We got to strike at her while she's recharging. And Batgirl hands over the gadgets, says, put these in a circle around her. I'm going to distract her while you get it done. And he's just like, do you always order Batman around? And she's like, nah, just the rookies. So Livewire is now back to full strength already. They clearly took too long. But they enact the plan. They throw down some smoke grenades. Barbara throws some punches, distracts her while Gordon goes around, setting down all the stuff. I really cannot tell you what happens here. It looks like she is absorbing the Livewire strikes into just a pair of rubber gloves. I don't think that's how that works, but then Gordon starts throwing batarangs as well. So it's 2 against 1. They're taking down Livewire, but like they can't get a grip on her because she is actually just made of energy. So at that point, Babs throws the bag over to Gordon. They pin her down somehow. I genuinely don't know what changed on the last issue to then, but regardless, as they get her down to the ground, they activate the stuff. They drop her down into a lower room, which I guess has water cooling, which causes to like disrupt her phase enough that she can't turn into energy. And then Babs activates the machine and pulls in Ghostbuster style. So she's now stuck in the trap. She goes over, tells Batman like, hey, high five. And he's like, I don't think Batman would do that either way. So he takes the trap and says like, look, a recovery unit's incoming. They're going to find you. You got to get out of here. But like, just know, if you're going to keep doing this, I'm not always going to be able to protect you. Like, I'm not going to be able to let you get away every single time. Eventually, I'm going to have to do it. And she's like, look, I hope you eventually come to realize that you can trust me and that we can make a good team together. So she starts walking away, and then she looks back and she's like, you didn't Batman out of the scene. You are new. So final little panels we get here are next morning, Babs wakes up. She's exhausted. She realized she barely got any sleep. And as she's planning on sleeping for the entire rest of the day today, she hears a bump outside her door. She's like, oh, who's that? Frankie, what's up? What's going on? But as she goes out, turns out it's her old roommate from the previous writer, Alicia. And she says, hey, sorry, I just stubbed my toe. Your roommate let me in before she went to bed. I had to come and see you, Babs. And she's like, oh, what is it? What's wrong? And she's like, nothing. But I'm just telling you, you need to go dress shopping because I'm getting married and you're going to be my maid of honor. So, cool. Alicia's getting married. I was very invested in that character's relationships. No, I mean, this is nice little fun that this book has been having, where it's mixing together the stuff of I hesitate to say teenage. I'm going to say 20-something. 20-something girls' life living in, like, not the lap of luxury, but, you know, not having to worry about that much stuff, where you can just go out and have fun with your friends regularly. And then also Batgirl. So I like that dichotomy, and this is just extending on that. Not really a bad turn of events either. I guess I'm okay with the Gordon and Babs, like, dichotomy there, where he's like, look, I don't want to bring you in, but, like, it's my bosses. But I kind of wish it was just a little bit more complicated. Like, maybe on some level he genuinely does think he's doing the right thing, and she has to, like, convince him not to. Instead, it's just from top to bottom, he's like, no, I know you guys are out there doing good, and I don't want to do this, but, like, yeah, it's my job. Like, that makes it just a bit too simple. I think that there is a little bit more nuance that could go into it. Maybe we'll get some more later, but that's my only real shaky point. Art-wise, fine. Rest of it, good. I'm going to say this one is probably just a flat 7 for me. And, yeah. Batgirl Annual number 3, written by Brendan Fletcher and Cameron Stewart. Art by a lot of people. It's not an anthology annual, but it's pretty damn close. So we open up with the first chapter, art by Bengal, and we have Batgirl saving some random guy from being run over by a bus, and he starts freaking out. He's like, oh, you gotta, what year is it? What's going on? What's the Negahedron? And I'm only going to say that the one time because it is difficult to say. So we have Babs taking an image of this guy, sending it to Frankie in the chair, and she's like, yeah, sure, I'll run facial recognition. And turns out it's this guy named Orrin Denby, who is the president of the United Nations Economic and Social Council. He recently went missing, and some CCTV caught him down by the river of the Gotham docklands. So they have no idea how this guy came to be. He seems to have amnesia, so Batgirl's off looking for clues, seeing what's going on. It turns out there's this place called Shrike Tower that Batgirl knows has always been a problem for Batman. It's always been a thing, so she's going down to check it out. As she gets there, she comes across a shadowy figure. Turns out it is Helena from Grayson, aka the director. And she's like, hey, who's there? What's up? Oh, hey, it's you, Batgirl. I thought you were over in Hipsterville. She's like, what? You know me? Who are you? I mean, I'm in charge of all of Gotham. So Helena introduces herself, says, hey, I'm the director. What are you doing here? And Batgirl says, I know about this guy. He has amnesia. I'm looking for leads. And she says, well, we have a device that was recently stolen by some terrorists. Perhaps our things are related. So let's work together. And she shakes hands with Batgirl as they start working together. Meanwhile, Helena turns around and is just like, hey, Grayson, your girlfriend's here. The redheaded one. And Dick's like, he's off knocking out a whole bunch of people, because it turns out that this place is actually filled to the brim with a bunch of terrorists. And Grayson's like, oh, Jesus. Okay, hey, these guys belong to a group called Gladius. I will stay ahead of it and work to make a path for you guys, but you cannot let Barbara see me, or else she will know that I faked my death, and that is not okay. I need to stay dead here. And she's like, but we have Hypnos. We have this thing that scrambles our faces. What is the big deal? And she's like, she will recognize me via other means, so don't let her get anywhere near me. So we see, there's a couple of men unconscious here, and Batgirl's like, hey, wait a minute, do you have someone else in the building? Because, like, why are these guys unconscious? And Helena's like, I have no idea. It's crazy to me. And then another guy just lands in front of them from a higher up level, and Helena's like, okay, I might have backup around here. It's no big deal. So a couple more goons come down, and again, this place is abandoned, but now it is run by Gladius, who is a terrorist cult thing. It's really not all that important, but they're coming out guns loaded. So Batgirl and Helena just start beating up as many people as possible. Helena's going for kill strikes. Batgirl's like, nope, no killing, so she has to tone down a little bit. We see Helena switches over to blunted arrows that she's firing off at them. As they take out the last of the goons for this given level, we see that Batgirl notices her shoe is untied. She bends over to tie it, and that's where Grayson has to like sprint down the hallway to not get caught. We then see Batgirl notices another goon, goes to give chase. By the time she gets there, the goon is knocked out, and she hears some movement from around the corner. And it turns out it's Grayson, and she doesn't see him, but she's like, oh, you better be a friendly over there. But before she can turn the corner, Helena calls out saying, hey, come on, I found a way up. It's over in this direction. Don't continue down that hallway. So they go over to the elevator, and they say, all right, the elevator's going to be too much noise if we use it. We got to climb up the shaft. They go out through the roof of the elevator cabin, and then there's just a bunch of these goons all coming down on cables, just descending to them. Fight scene continues, and we see as they scramble their way up and out of the elevator shaft, Helena's like, hey, Grayson, what's up, man? You were supposed to give us a lead. What's going on? Grayson's being choked out by this massive henchman, and he's like, I could use a hand here. I'm not doing so hot. So director Helena's just like, Batgirl, why don't you go over in some other direction, and I'm going to go do something else. And she's like, what? And he's like, don't worry about it. Go, quickly, run. So Batgirl runs off. Helena goes to help Dick, gets him out of the mess that he's in, and we see Batgirl comes across this big locked door, and Grayson's like, man, I lost my lead. She's gonna see me. This is all, it's all going to hell. But Batgirl goes inside the door, and it turns out she's not actually where Grayson is. She's inside this room where there's this woman doing experiments on these 4 people. They are all seemingly in some sort of a trance. As soon as the woman sees Batgirl, she types in a few codes, plugs in a USB drive, and then tries to bolt. But Batgirl manages to tackle her down. The woman says, hey, you can either stop me or you can save them, because that thing's going to blow up in just a few minutes. So Batgirl puts a tracker in her pocket without noticing and then goes off to save the people. We see the backup that Helena mentioned. It is this older looking man named, I don't know, Christian Kroger. And it's just Dick wearing the Hypnos. He's got the disguise and stuff on. But Batgirl doesn't quite notice who he is because he stands way far away and he's barely noticed. And Batgirl's like, hey, could you, I don't know, come over here, help me out with the bomb? And he doesn't move. And then Helena comes in saying, oh, I'll do that. He's just here for keeping an eye on things. Don't worry about it. So Batgirl's suspicious of Christian. But Helena, after working on the bomb for a while, says, I can't disarm it. We're out of time. We got to bail now. So each of them grabs some people. They parachute and or grapple out of there. And there's a pickup spot for the spiral agents where they load them all in. And Batgirl's like, hey, will you tell me what this is all about? What did Gladius want with these diplomats? Because all these people are part of the UN and whatnot. And Helena says, the device, it's called a hive mind. It's combining all of their minds and memories into a single functioning brain. But I don't know what that's all about. And Batgirl says, I heard something about the negahedron. And immediately Helena's like, okay, well, we'll look into that, but we got to go, bye. And so Christian gets in the plane, but as he is climbing up into the cabin, Batgirl gets a look at his ass, and she's like, wait a minute, I'd know that ass anywhere. But we see, once Dick gets in, he takes off the disguise, and he's just like, oh man, it's so hard being able to see her but not tell her. It really is. And Helena's like, I don't care, please, let's get out of here. So Babs considers it to be Grayson, says, nah, that's impossible. All right, whatever. I gotta continue on the path. And I thought, okay, we did a Grayson crossover. Cool, awesome. That's what the issue is. That's what's on the cover. No, this is the entire Bat line. So we switch over to the second one, which is David LaFuente on the art. Babs is trying to track down that woman who had the tracker on her. They can't find the tracer anywhere. And she's got a little handheld computer device to track it, when all of a sudden she gets clotheslined out of nowhere. Turns out it's Stephanie Brown Spoiler, who's just super pumped by the fact that she managed to get the drop on Barbara. And she's saying, oh man, I can't wait to tell my teacher about that. And it says, see the Catwoman series. So immediately Barbara gets up and just knocks Spoiler on her ass. And she's just like, oh, no fair. I'm just doing this for training. That's all this is. And she starts trying to spar with Barbara. Barbara's just dodging every shot. And when she gets Stephanie in a headlock, she's like, look, I'd love to do this, but I'm kind of busy. And all of a sudden the tracer goes off and says like, hey, hold on, she's nearby. So both her and Stephanie look over the edge of a building, and they see the woman coming out of a coffee shop carrying a briefcase, like handcuffed to her hand. And Batgirl's like, all right, this woman's a terrorist. We got to get down there and do it. Here's the plan. You don't get in too close. You're going to hang back here. And then she looks around and Stephanie's already down there causing chaos, absolutely doing everything to get her hands on this woman. And to be fair, it works. She has completely tied up and incapacitated the terrorist, brought her back up to the rooftop and said, hey, I did it. Check it out. Awesome. Batgirl's like, yeah, that wasn't really stealthy at all. But they go ahead and they talk to the terrorist woman, and she's just like, oh, I'm never going to tell you anything. The only things I'll specifically tell you is I don't lead Gladius. I'm just working for her. So Gladius, I guess, is a single person and also a woman. And just like, and also when the Negahedron is recovered, we will strike at the very heart of Gotham. You're all going to die. Mwahaha. And then Batgirl and Stephanie look at each other and be like, was this your first supervillain speech? And Stephanie's like, nah, my dad's Clue Master. It's cool. Don't worry about it. So Batgirl says, all right, we're not going to get anything else out of her. She's definitely one of those types that's like smart enough not to give it up. Go ahead and take her to the proper authorities. And Stephanie is like, aye, Captain. She looks down on her wrist and sees that Barbara left the tracker computer for her. And she's like, oh, man, that's awesome. All right, story number 3. We go to Batwoman, and this is art by Ming Doyle. Batwoman's just fighting some random guys in a bar, as far as I could tell, and she cracks a bottle open, holds it against some guy's throat, and says, tell me where Tina Nair is. And we see Batgirl's in the door of the bar saying, hey, he doesn't know, but I might. Turns out, between those two stories, she did some background checks on that person and some of the diplomats and all that, and the one connection was a Colonel Nair whose house was left ransacked, and when Batgirl heard the commotion across the street, she saw Batwoman was there. So Batwoman's like, yeah, I went to Nair's place beforehand. I knew her specifically, and I figured she might be at the bar because she's a regular there, and the bikers there aren't exactly on the up and up. So turns out that Nair was kidnapped just a few hours prior, and their latest position is a cornfield up ahead. So they get in there, and Batwoman's like, so what's going on with you? And she's like, don't worry about it. It's a long thing. And as they make their way through the cornfield, they come to a wicker man, a giant stick man with a cage in the chest that is holding this Colonel Nair. And we see this person, Gladius, is just standing there watching it burn. So Batgirl goes in, starts attacking Gladius. It really isn't that much of a fight. Like, it takes a few shots from both Batgirl and Batwoman, but she goes down pretty easily. And Batwoman, of course, rescues Colonel Nair from the wicker thing, and Colonel Nair's like, I was just waiting for my old cadet Kate Kane to come and visit. We talk every month, but then all of a sudden I was kidnapped. And what are you doing here, Batwoman? She's like, nothing, never mind. So as they go and talk to Colonel Nair and say, hey, this is Gladius, like, do you have any idea why she would be after you? And the Colonel says, yeah, a couple years back we came up with we were working security for this weapon, and each of us were told to memorize a specific part of it, or blah, blah, blah. It was the Negahedron. And lo and behold, the blueprints were essentially scattered, but in a way where, like, they could be, her bit would be put into a blueprint or a USB drive or something that was hidden at the school that her sister's kid went to. And so Batgirl's like, okay, well, I guess that's my next stop. But then they look over and they see that Gladius has managed to escape. So then we cut to story 4, art by Mingjue Helen Chen. And it's at Gotham Academy. And Batgirl is looking in the library. Turns out that this statue that the Colonel said that it was in, the head off of it was stolen years and years ago. So they're trying to find wherever it is. The rumor is that it's hidden under the library. So Babs is just pulling books, trying to find the secret bookshelf, like secret lever. Turns out it works. She finds the secret one, but hidden in the back of the secret lever is Maps and Olive from the Gotham Academy series. And Maps is like, oh my god, it's Batgirl. What's Batgirl doing? This is amazing. And so Maps is saying like, oh yeah, we're just mapping out secret passageways. It's no good. What are you doing here? And she's like, oh, well, I'm kind of on a mission. She's like, oh my God, let's help. So they offer to walk her through all the secret passages that they got. They're saying that they're looking for the head of this statue. And Olive just immediately finds it. Like, oh, here's a box and it's heavy. And inside is the statue head. And Batgirl shakes it around, feels something rattling. But immediately in comes Gladius, who picks it up, steals it, and bolts down a stair, or up a stairwell, I should say, because they end up on a rooftop fight. And Gladius is like, haha, soon I will have all the blueprints I need for the weapon. And then she gets a batarang to the neck. Not like damaging, just enough to distract. Turns out it's a batarang from an earlier Gotham Academy story that Maps has, and just like, yes, I did it. I threw a batarang. So it distracts just long enough for Batgirl to come in, knocks Gladius out, finally actually captures her, and in all of the hubbub, the statue head got dropped and split open, to which they pull out and show, hey, look, it's an old microfilm. Must be what they were looking for. So they go down to the library and they load up the microfilm thing, but there's also when they load it up, it's all a bunch of scribbles, but there's also a USB thing that, according to Bab, says, this computer can render the cipher, superimpose it over the blueprint image, and then it just shows up as a blueprint. And they're all just like, oh my God, what is this? It looks like it's for a weapon. And Batgirl's like, yep, it could destroy the world. We need to keep it safe. And then the projector that has the microfilm in it catches on fire. And they're like, oh no, well, your microfilm is destroyed. It's gone. There's no way to possibly save this. So at that point, the librarian comes in and it's just like, hey, you girls should be in bed. You're not allowed to be out here this late. But Batgirl's already disappeared to the wind and whatnot. Batgirl also, when she was putting out the fire on the thing, said, always be prepared for fires or whatever. First rule of Superhero Club. And Maps hears that and goes, Superhero Club? That's a great idea. And so she goes up to her room and starts mapping out and designing her costume. And it sounds like she's basing it very strongly off of Batgirl. The end. It's dense. It's got a lot going on. It's not a bad book by any means, but I expected the entirety of it to be that Grayson crossover, and then it just kept going. This was a standard length annual. It wasn't significantly longer, but it felt like it. It felt like there was so many more pages, because every time you think okay, and then that's it, it just keeps going. So I mean, you get your money's worth, I'll say that much. I will say this one doesn't exactly feel like it's just an ad for the Batline. Sometimes whenever there's this crossovers like this, it just feels like it's an advertisement for whatever the books are that we're crossing over with. This one feels like it is genuinely just trying to intersect all the different Bat books together and saying what's the state of Gotham? How's everything mapping together here? And what happens when Barbara comes across all those? So in that aspect, I think it's good. I think I'm probably going to stick this one at 7.5. I think art-wise, it's very good. Story-wise, it's a little weak, but it's only because it's basically just MacGuffin chase the book. The whole thing is just, eventually we'll get to this thing that we brought up about the Negahedron. So yeah, 7.5 is not bad at all. And frankly, I would suggest it for people who are looking for more Batwoman at this point, and also like Gotham Academy, because both those sections were very good. Deathstroke Annual number 1, written by Tony S. Daniel and James Bonny, art by Tyler Kirkham. So this is one of those annuals where it picks up the storyline that's going on, it gives some depth, but it is absolutely completely skippable. There is we end the story in the exact same spot where we started, but we learned a little something along the way. So at the end of the last issue, Deathstroke was sent to kill a Titan. The Titan escaped imprisonment. Wonder Woman found out. They fought for a little bit. And meanwhile, the Titan got his body back and is ready to roll. We open up this issue with Deathstroke basically recounting that. He's still facing off against Wonder Woman slightly, but they are both immediately distracted as it's written as Lapetus. I remember that it's actually pronounced Iopetus. So Iapetus is like, oh, after 10,000 years, I'm free, try to conquer Earth or whatever. And he's got an entire army raised up, whereas the Amazons are ready on Wonder Woman's side, and Deathstroke's just standing there with his crazy weird sword. And he's just like, hey, we'll take you down, we'll do whatever we can. And he's just like, Slade Wilson, you literally took me out of the prison. You have my thanks for that. And he's just like, I wasn't trying to, don't thank me. So at that point, they both launch into battle. Wonder Woman's ready to kill. He's ready to kill. And Iapetus is just like, ha, this shall be your reward for freeing me. And he just like mentally blasts them through reality until they end up apparently in some layer of hell. So they come to and they look around and they see that apparently this is either hell itself, something that's a similar projection, or possibly Tartarus. But regardless, Wonder Woman's like, yeah, Titans have crazy, powerful stuff going on, so this must be one of his powers. And Deathstroke's like, all right, well, we got to find a way out. Can you fly? And she's like, nope, doesn't seem like I can. Also, I don't take orders from you. And he's just like, whatever. So at that point, we see a whole bunch of, I'm going to call them demons. They don't look like your stereotypical one, but they are people who are working for Iapetus, and they come in a huge horde and start attacking. And Deathstroke's like, I'm not a stranger to slaying large hordes. So Wonder Woman's like, go ahead and prove it, Deathstroke. And a huge battle breaks out, and Deathstroke's like, oh yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. I'm happy that Wonder Woman has my back and all that, and we're going at it here. But these people just keep on coming and coming and coming. Like I don't know if we're going to be able to do this, because it doesn't seem like there's an end to them. And Wonder Woman asks, like, oh, what does a man like you think about in his last moments of life? And he's like, I'll let you know when I get there, but I'm not there yet. And his internal monologue narrates saying, I don't want to tell her that I just miss my kids. So all of a sudden, all the monsters start running away. They seem to be scared by something. Deathstroke and Wonder Woman look up and say, oh, okay. And it turns out that a huge, I'm going to call it Goliath, Titan, whatever you want to say, formed out of the bodies of all these other smaller demons, starts lumbering towards them, and just like, okay, well, yeah, that's a problem. But behind the creature is a portal, and they say, okay, well, then we don't even have to fight it. Let's just dodge around and go to the portal. So they get around, they jump in. When they get there, though, they see that there are actually 3 portals off the edge of a cliff, and as they jump towards them, they're like, okay, cool, we just got to get into one of them. Let's figure out which one it is. But then all of a sudden, they start getting pulled apart. Slade into one portal, Wonder Woman into another, and they end up in their own different realities. It cuts back and forth. I'll just stick with Slade at first here. Slade is in Istanbul. It was many years ago. He remembers this. He comes across Hesia, who is at a table, which makes sense because last issue Hesia was like, Deathstroke, we meet again. Turns out this is where they met. And Hesia's like, oh yeah, you know, this did already happen. Do you remember when we were both here? But check it out. Things are different this time. And she points to a table behind her, and his kids are there, along with this huge hooded figure that we can't see the face of. And he's just like, wait a minute. No, they're so young. They're like 5 years old each, and I remember what happens here. And he looks around. Turns out this Istanbul job was him getting the drop on a bunch of terrorists before they caused a mass casualty event. But whoopsie, he didn't quite get the lead time here because he was too worried about his kids. So he's trying to tell his kid, like, we got to get out of here. And the kid's like, but we got ice cream. And then the terrorists start opening up shots. Deathstroke throws up a table to try to protect his family. And it seems like nobody is caring about this, but he's still desperate to protect them. So Deathstroke eventually comes back around. He starts killing all the terrorists, and he's like, all right, I get it. This is different. This isn't, you know, the same rules as it was back then. Things are different now. So then he starts using his sword. He starts slashing through everybody, and he's like, all right, perfect, I did it. And Hesia's like, great job, but your kids are still in danger. And as he looks over, he sees the hooded figure starting to stand up. And he tells them, like, hey, kids, can you maybe get away from the strange hooded figure? Turns out it's Iapetus, and he's just like, I hope you enjoy your reward. Your kids are going to grow to hate you. And Deathstroke's like, yeah, they already have. Don't worry about it. So he takes the 5-year-olds away and say, like, hey, let's go play a game, kids. And he somehow just leads them off of a cliff. And I'll get to the rest later, but cutting over to Wonder Woman's side, she ends up in a London that seemingly has been completely destroyed. Everything's all Mad Max around everywhere. And Superman stumbles out of the fog saying, like, this is all your fault. Diana, you weren't here. The bombs, humanity failed. Humanity was doing their war thing, and bombs were flying, and I tried to stop so many of them, but you're the god of war. This is your fault. You're responsible for this. And we see Superman's looking all emaciated because nuclear fallout or whatever. So Wonder Woman's basically like, no, this isn't what I wanted. I couldn't have done this. And then he's like, you have become death, destroyer of worlds. You're going to die alone, Diana. And Wonder Woman goes no and tries to attack Superman, but he just immediately puffs into dust. And she's like, oh, right, yeah, no, none of this is real. None of it's real. I gotta just say that. And then all of a sudden she just crashes through reality again. Both of them end up in a black void, separate from each other. Wonder Woman wakes up and finds Hippolyta there, basically chewing her out, saying, like, I'm dead because of you. This is all your fault, Diana. You're a failure at everything you've ever done. You're a crappy god, a crappy daughter, and a crappy warrior. And Wonder Woman just looks sad for a moment. I was like, okay, look, I get the gist of what Iapetus is trying here, but, like, I'm done. We're not doing this anymore. And then Hippolyta just poofs into dust, and one of them was like, okay, I gotta find Deathstroke. Meanwhile, Deathstroke, he was with his kids. The kids are now grown up into their adult forms that he's familiar with, and they just start chewing him out, saying like, you're a crappy dad, you've ruined our lives, you dragged us down into hell with you. And Deathstroke's like, hey, I can fix this, I can get you out of here. It's like, you've never fixed anything in your life, you suck, you're the worst. So then they start literally just kicking him and beating him, and that's when Wonder Woman's like, oh, hey, Slade, you doing all right over there? And he's just like, no. So Wonder Woman wrestles the kids off of him, and as Wonder Woman's like, hey, you can't just give up. It's what he wants. He wants you to think we're going to die alone. And Deathstroke gets up, grabs a sword, looks all pissed, and the kids puff into dust, and he's like, all right, we're going to fight together. So they join hands. They, I don't know, find Jesus, and then they go back up out of the portals into the realm with all those demon beasts again. Deathstroke now has dual swords, and he starts really laying into them, and once again he's happy to be part of the fight. Him and Wonder Woman fight with renewed vigor, and as they get up to the supermassive titan looking thing, they jump up towards its face because it seems to be the obvious weak point. It's glowing purple. As they approach it, they see the bodies of Superman, Hippolyta, and Deathstroke's kids, and they freeze for a second. They're just like, oh god, okay, he's playing on our fears. He doesn't know who he's dealing with here. And they end up going and just slashing, managing to take it down. Inside of the head of the Titan was the portal back to Themyscira, back to Paradise Island. And it's like, awesome, we got to get through before it closes. So they jump through, and when they come out, the Amazons have already begun their battle against Iapetus' army, and now they're ready to join the fight as well. So, yeah, once again, that entire issue is absolutely skippable. You get the character development, you get them like, you know, we have to overcome our own self-doubts and da-da-da-da-da. Also, the art is good. There's no point in here that I think the art looks bad, and it's a good issue on its own. But in terms of storytelling and like the arc that's happening here, it is absolutely fluff and filler. It's like, oh yeah, I guess I have an annual this month. Well, and then they overcame their fears. The battle continues. So like, yeah, it's fine on what it is. It's just skippable for anyone who cares about that sort of thing. I guess I'll say this one is probably going to be like a 7.5 for me. I think it needed to be something that actually matters. And for all I know, it very well may be, if we get to a later point, they mention like, well, remember that thing that we learned when we were in the weird other realm? But it just feels like something that's going to be not mentioned. But for if it mattered, I'd give it probably up into an 8. As it stands now, there's just a max cap that it can hit at that 7.5 level. But the art is good enough, and the writing and the tone of the characters, it all gets up to that cap. So 7.5. The Flash Annual Number 4, written by Van Jensen, art by Bong Dazo. So a couple issues ago, when we first started this arc involving Reverse Flash, Eobard Thawne, he had a gang, and I didn't recognize pretty much any of them. Turns out this is their origin issue. Who are these people? Why are they here? And it's told throughout time. So we open up in 1520 in what remains of the Aztec Empire. We come across this woman who finds a bird who's a little bit injured. And she's like, oh, I've been around for so long, and I want to be able to save you. And so she has some sort of magic. She uses that, and she heals this bird, and it flies away. But in doing the magic, she's approached by a bunch of conquistadors who see her, and they're like, just speaking in Spanish. It's not something that's translated. But it's very clear that they're saying, which she's going to be able to tell us what we need is, go ahead and get her. And this hooded figure steps up and basically says, hold on, let me jump in the way here and like see what's up. So he walks up, talks to her. Turns out her name is Magali. And he's like, oh, I know about your abilities, and I'm not a conquistador. You don't have to fear me. And he's like, all right, well, who are you? And he's old as hell. He's like 150 years old. And he says, by the way, I'm Eobard Thawne, and I'm come to save you. And we basically see him just give this whole tale saying, like, look, we heard tales about the Fountain of Youth. We figure it's you because you just saved that bird. You gave it back its youth and whatnot. They know they couldn't tame you, so they kept on hunting you. And she's like, yeah, no, I'm aware. I've been hunted for a while. And he's like, right. So here's the deal. If you make me young, I'll protect you. And she's like, deal. So she makes Eobard Thawne somewhat young again. He's ripped at the very least. And turns out he's got giant claw hands. Like, just like 3-inch long claw nails on each hand. And now that he's young, he's like, all right, I'm going to go attack the conquistadors now. So he does have super speed. He runs around. He kills them all. And when he slows down again, he looks at Magali and he's just like, oh, you've got powers. I have them too. The lightning chose you the same way it chose me. We're part of the same family. Let's go find the others. And Magali's like, all right, I mean, I don't have a lot of purpose here anymore because my entire culture is gone, but like, sure, yeah, let's go ahead. So she asks, okay, well, what is all this for? What are we assembling for? And he says, oh, well, there's the demon in the future, this demon who's evil incarnate, and we have to destroy him no matter what. He goes by the name Flash. So we cut to 1883 in South Africa. There's a diamond mine where a bunch of slaves are, of course, forced to work. We see that as the diamonds are deposited in a building at the end of the day, someone breaks in. He's called the Folding Man. He's got like a magic mask or something on, and he steals the diamonds. He does get caught, but by the time that someone manages to yell for help and come back, he's gone. And everyone's like, how could he have gotten out? We were at the main door. All the walls are solid. There's no way it could have happened, but it's because he's able to like fold through space. That's his thing. So we cut over to a nearby village, and we see his name is Zolani, and he's got all these diamonds and whatnot. He leaves one behind for his wife, who's there in the village with him, and he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna take these away. I have to make sure that if there's a surprise inspection or whatever, that they aren't gonna find anything. But he does leave one behind with his wife. So we see Zolani just goes and dumps him in a big hole way outside the village where nobody can find it. And Eobard and Magali show up, and he's like, I don't understand why you're stealing these diamonds just to throw them back into the ground. And Zolani doesn't like the fact that he's been found, so he tries attacking Eobard, who Magali manages to hold back the guy. And Eobard's like, hey, look, you got a lot of talent, you're doing whatever, but like, for real, why are you stealing diamonds and hiding them in a hole? And unable to move, Folding Man's just like, I'm not stealing them. They belong to my people, and they're being stolen. If I make it so that there's no profit in these guys' business, they'll leave our village alone, and then we can get back to normal. Eobard's like, okay, fair enough, solid. But I see your powers here. I apologize if I offended you, but I want you to join us. And he's just like, no, I got to protect my village. And he looks over his shoulder and sees smoke from a village. He's like, ah, crap. So he folds over there. Eobard runs up like a super speed, carrying Magali as fast as he can, and the village has been attacked. It's been ransacked. Everyone is dead, and he's just like, oh, I was so careful. I don't understand how it would have happened. I'm going to kill them all. I'm going to do that. And Eobard's like, look, it's not going to work out for you unless you have help. I'm willing to help you out here. Are you going to join me? And Folding Man's like, absolutely. Cut to 1957 in Australia. There is a circus act. A woman who is, I believe, Maori, is one of the acts. Turns out she is known as the human cinder block, where no one can move her, not even an inch. And so people pay $1 and come up and try to do it. If she moves, then they win like $100. So a bunch of people come up, absolutely no luck. Everyone's doing whatever they can. Eventually, as the show's about to come down for the night, in comes this super huge, horrible looking dude, and he's like, I bet I can make the Sheila move. And he basically says, like, oh, because she's not special. She's not special at all. And she's just dirty carnival trash. And he keeps on telling her just how much of trash she is, like making fun of her people, making fun of her tattoos, all that sort of stuff. And the woman just says, like, what the hell did you say? Comes over, punches him square in the face, and then just starts like going on a rampage throughout the crowd. Somebody tries to shoot her. It doesn't stop her. And everyone's like, oh, okay, she's some kind of freak. Oh, we got to take care of her. And then in comes the rest of the gang, Thawne and crew. Folding Man manages to grab her, and they all just teleport her out of the scene and say, hey, that looks like it was about to get rough. Hope you don't mind. We're saving you here. They do their introductions, and they say, yeah, you know, this is what we do. This is all that. You have power as well, and we would like an offer for you to be viewed as a god, not just a freak. What do you say? And she's just like, yeah, no, totally, I'm in. And then we come to 1982 in Oklahoma. There's a tornado just ripping through town. We see Eobard's gang is watching it, and they say, yeah, you can see, like, in the middle of the tornado, there's a dude in there. There's a dude just walking. So, Folding Man, could you take care of that? And so he teleports into the middle, grabs hold of the person inside the middle, and just teleports him out. And we see that it's a guy named Roscoe, and he's super upset. He's being held in place by the Maori woman. I don't remember her name offhandedly. And because she's unmovable, he can't do anything. His powers basically conk out, and he's just like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do it. I was at a halfway home, and they give me pills, but they weren't working. I didn't know what to do." And Eobard's like, "Look, you have always been treated as a monster, and they stuffed you full of those pills, but there's nothing wrong with you. You're special just like us. What happened to that home? It wasn't your fault, but they're gone now, and you could use somebody else to help you out. We've all got powers. We want to make you special. Come with us. You're not a monster. You're a god." And Roscoe's like, "Oh, gee, I caused some pretty bad stuff." And Eobard's like, "I will give you guidance. You will be okay." And he's like, "All right, cool. Awesome." So we cut to now, and we see the entire crew has now got like new technology. They're in some sort of training room, and they're attacking Thawne. They're doing whatever, and Thawne's like, "All right, good, keep it up, keep training." And so we see the Maori woman is attacking, throwing punches heavily. Roscoe's providing cover with the tornado stuff, and then Folding Man and Magali manages to push him into a specific place where he can't escape. He's unable to be moved, and Thawne essentially loses. He's taken out of the game, and as he's knocked out, they're like, "Okay, good job. End the simulation. You guys did it." But you got to remember, I held back. That demon Flash, the one we're all training for, he's not going to hold back. He's not going to show mercy. He will put a fist through your skull if you hold back for even a minute. And then in walks Selkirk, the guy from the previous arc, who got a little bit of like Flash powers, and he's like, "You guys don't want to underestimate Barry Allen. He sucks." And everyone's like, "Why is Selkirk? He didn't even get the lightning powers. He just stole it from someone else." And Thawne's like, "Nah, look, we're all here for the same purpose. We're all here to take out the Flash, and we have the power to kill him, and you have to make sure that before we kill him, though, because he's made himself so popular with the people, he'd be a martyr if we kill him now. So first we have to tarnish his reputation, and then we can take out the evil that is Eobard Thawne, or not Eobard, Barry Allen." So they say, "All right, yeah, we're ready for the final battle, whatever." We see that this is, someplace, it looks like futuristic. It looks like all the buildings are futuristic in Central City. And we have the Maori woman who's asking Eobard, like, "Hey, look, you've known what all of us can be for so long. Why have we waited until now? Why are we waiting until this time at this place? Like, what's your connection with the Flash, essentially?" And Eobard's like, "Look, I've I've seen a world broken and shattered because of him. On like I have burdened myself with this for all these years. I'm sorry to say this, but you're just going to have to accept a little bit of mystery on this one. So already that's, he's gaslit and lied to all these people, gotten them to be part of the team. But then we get the turn where it's, oh God, it's so much worse than that. So we cut back to Roscoe. Remember how he said he needed to take those pills? We see him getting them from the nurse, and the nurse is genuinely kind to him. And as the pill is about to go into his mouth, Eobard uses his powers to neutralize it. And so it doesn't actually do anything to him, and he loses control, and all those people die. We then go back to the circus, and we see the guy who was giving such a big thing to the Maori woman. He was just going to leave. He was helping his drunk friends leave because he's like, yeah, you guys are too drunk. We got to get you home. And then Eobard comes up saying hey, sir, could you spare $1? I can pay you back $5 because I know exactly how to make that woman move. See, the rules say that you have to make her move, but it doesn't say you have to push her. I'm going to taunt her and demean her until she moves of her own accord, and technically I'll win $100 from that. And then the guy says, hey, thanks for your strategy. I'm going to go win $100. So that was all his plan. We go back to the diamond mines, and we see as the people are upset over the fact that their diamonds have been stolen, Eobard steps in and says, hey, maybe check out this village over in this direction. I'm betting you they're there at a 20% recovery rate that you'll pay me for telling you this information. And they say 5, and he says 10 because he doesn't care about the money. So then we then see he runs in, and the diamond that was left behind for the wife wasn't actually left behind by the husband. It was left behind by Eobard because the husband wouldn't have been that careless. So when they arrive, they find the diamond, they kill everybody there. And then we go back to the conquistadors, and they see this entire Aztec empire, and just yeah, well, we see this entire thing, and we must go out and try to find this woman who can make people younger, but we have absolutely no leads. There's nothing we can do at all. And then in comes Eobard Thawne saying I know exactly where to find her, and you're just gonna have to trust me. And they go out on the hunts, and they're like, who are you, strange man? He's like, oh, you'll find out very soon. What's that WandaVision meme that it was Agatha all along? It was Eobard all along. So yeah, I mean it's a good issue. I think it does a good job of setting up not only the team, not only how they came to working with Eobard, how they got gaslit into thinking that the Flash is evil, but also just to double whammy say and this is how evil Eobard is. It's all been part of his plan. Every single bit of this has been him just pulling strings since the beginning. So no, it's a solid little character bit. I don't really have anything super negative to say about it, except for the name of that Maori woman. That might have been my fault of just not really paying attention, but I don't feel like I really got her name. Meet the human cinder block, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I really don't see the name there. So that's the only one I would put up a little bit of an thing with, of saying how should probably make sure that when you're introducing the character that we at least know the names of the characters. This one just kind of went by, unless that's part of her character, who knows. Anyway, ratings wise, I think I'm going to give this one, honestly, I think I'm going to give it an 8. And I think a big part of that is I'm kind of just happy it's not Brett Booth art. It's been something that's really been holding this book down, is that it's been Brett Booth art. So to not have that, very excited. Gotham by Midnight, Annual Number 1, written by Ray Fawkes, art by Christian Duce. So this is a gentleman's ghost story. For anyone who doesn't know Gentleman Ghosts, they get into it later, but it is a pre-established character. We see the character who we'll find out is Gentleman Ghost, Craddock, Mr. Craddock, is seducing a young woman, and she's saying, oh, I would die for you. And as soon as he leans in, he's like, oh, I have something else in mind, Miss Weir. And he kisses her and says oh, you are so bewitching. And then there's a knock at the door, and then a few more knocks, and then all of a sudden, boom, GCPD. It's Precinct 13. We have Corrigan and Drake are there, and Corrigan's holding some sort of magical amulet of some sort, to which Craddock just starts booking it. He just starts running. Corrigan throws the gem at him, but Craddock phases through a wall, so it just bounces right off the wall, and Drake's like, "Ah, God, all right, I'll go get it. You take care of the girl." So we see inside the building, because they were outside on like a patio, inside the building, he's running through a pool table. Drake tries to catch up, but he's just walking through objects, so he can just go in a straight line where she has to dodge around stuff, and he's like, God, I just hate running. So Corrigan, we see he's got some magic hands going on, like they're glowing, and he's telling Miss Weir to hold still. I don't know what he's trying to do, though. It never comes up. And Weir's just like, oh my God, he just went through the wall. I don't understand, but he loves me. And Corrigan's like, yeah, sorry. Also, weren't you wearing a necklace earlier? So we see Drake is still giving chase, and we get the explanation. His name is Jim Craddock. He's a ghost and also a thief. We've been trailing him for weeks, and he always manages to charm his way in, and he has some sort of ethereal power that allows him to charm pretty much anybody. And that's where we cut over to Drake finally catching up. And Drake's like, all right, I've got you here. Don't try anything. And he's like, why would I try anything? My, you are so full of surprises, Miss Drake. Are those handcuffs in your pocket? And she's like, yes, it is. And I will, if you do anything, I say the word and I will put you back in your coffin. And he's just like, oh, I'm flattered, honestly. May I offer you a necklace? It would look fantastic on you. And Drake's just like, you're under arrest for stealing and stuff. And he's just like, oh, I think that you have me, detective, but I think that you're bluffing, but you could have me if you wanted. And then all of a sudden he disappears. And she did manage to put the handcuffs on him, so he managed to somehow get out of the handcuffs, and Drake is like, okay, well, I was told that would work by Corrigan, but also, yeah, he was absolutely doing something to me there. So she goes back out to Corrigan. Corrigan's holding the body of Weir, the woman from before, and he's like, hey, Drake, call an ambulance. Something's going on with her. So they load her up, and Corrigan's like, yeah, he must have poisoned her, or it's a spell or something. I don't know. And they won't let her mother hold her hand. So we're not sure exactly what's going on with her yet. And Drake's like, it was weird, though. I put the handcuffs on him. You said that should have kept him. But he also gave me the necklace before he left. Why would he do that if that's what he was after? So Corrigan bags it and takes it to go get looked at by their resident in-house scientist, Dr. Tarr. And Tarr's just like, yeah, it's this special necklace called the Tears of Eurydice. And it's from old English times, but it just disappeared for a long period, and then it all of a sudden showed back up in an auction, and that's where the Weir family bought it. And it's just like, okay, fair enough. But what is there, like, spooky about it? Why is it so important to Ghost? And Tara's like, there's nothing. I don't sense any sort of spectral energy or anything like that. It's just a normal necklace. And Corrigan's like, okay, but like the specter in me felt something. It's connected to a sin somehow. I don't know. Something's going on with it. And he's like, oh, I don't know, maybe because it was stolen. He's like, nah, that's not it. I don't know. It's just a gut feeling. So we cut over to Miss Weir. Drake is inside the room talking to her as she's basically comatose. And she's like, oh, he did something to us. He was inside our mind. Like, I've been dating this guy, Pete. He's a dog walker. I've been dating him for almost a year. He's fantastic. He's the sweetest guy. And then all of a sudden I was willing to throw it all away for Gentleman Ghost. He's definitely doing something to us. And all of a sudden Eleanor, Miss Weir, freaks out, looks up at the moon and says, like, the moon! He always comes back with the moon! So we go over to Corrigan's office, and Gentleman Ghost just appears in the room. And Corrigan's like, you're either stupid or the bravest man I've ever met to show up knowing what's inside me. And Braddock just extends his hand, says like, oh, I just wanted to, you can call me Gentleman Ghost, and I'm not really a ghost, you should know that. And Corrigan's like, yeah, okay, regardless, like, you're hiding a knife behind your back. I don't shake hands with people like that. And he's like, that's very unkind of you. So they just start talking for a while. Corrigan's trying to get info on why the necklace is important, and why he poisoned Miss Weir. And Braddock points out, like, that's not my fault. Part of my powers is my first kiss takes away your breath. The second one gives it back. You interrupted me before I could give the second one, so that's on you. And he like gets right up in Corrigan's face, and it seems like he's kind of doing the same sort of seduction to Jim. And he's just like, oh yeah, what am I thinking then? And then all of a sudden Braddock disappears. Corrigan just goes, damn it, and just slams his fist on his hand, or on his desk. So they spend the night. We see Drake is in one room, Corrigan's in the other. The moon is still high in the sky. And eventually we go to a train yard and a subway. All of a sudden, Gentleman Ghost just appears in a seat. But the moment he does, Corrigan and Drake are there. They have the gemstone again, and they hold it up against him. And he's genuinely surprised. He's like, "What? How did you even know I'd be here? I just appeared here. What's up?" And Drake is like, "Oh yeah, well, you didn't think we would know you'd be here, or did you think we wouldn't know how to hold you?" And we see the gem is there. Corrigan pulls out the necklace and says, "All right, so here we go. Let's try this again. What's up with the necklace?" And Braddock's just angry. He's not saying anything. Drake starts taunting him like, "Oh, what? We think we figured it out. It's the reason that you tried to separate us. Your spell can only work on one person at a time. As long as there are two of us, we can keep you under wraps." And he starts like laying the moves on Drake like, "Oh, you are so intelligent. You figured that all out. That's fantastic. I really am in awe of your entire..." And then Corrigan's like, "Stop that. Stop what you're doing right there." So Braddock's like, "All right, fine, we'll do this the hard way." And he punches Corrigan in the face, manages to kick Drake away. But because of that, tiny little specter problem, Corrigan all of a sudden is like, "Oh God, it's coming out. I'm going to have an issue here." So Drake manages to get hands on Braddock, says like, "Look, I've got a gem in my pocket that can blow you to bits. We've still got the gem that's holding you in place. So you better start talking or else, you'll see if we're bluffing." And he's just like, "Fine. All right. I surrender. Let's sit down and we can talk about it." And he's like, "What do you mean talk about it? No, we're taking you off the train and we're taking you in. That's what's going to happen here." But Corrigan's like, "You know what? Nah. All right. I'm curious. I've read all these stories about the Gentleman Ghost, and I've got the actual real one here. I want to know your story. Tell me about Gentleman Ghost." So they sit down and like they get some drinks and whatnot, and they just start going over his history. And he basically says, "Yeah, back in the day, I was, I'm just a normal dude. I never was a ghost, but I was cursed by a witch who forced me to be a criminal for her. And because I was so charming, she hated me for being a rascal and having my way with certain women and whatnot. And eventually I was, the powers that she forced me into, the sort of state that I was in, it was her doing, and I was forced to do whatever she wanted, but I was able to maneuver around certain demands and basically cause her untimely death in a way. And in doing so, I was there to witness her death. And as soon as she died, I thought, thank God, now I'll be free. Turns out I wasn't. And now there's nobody who can undo my curse because she died without undoing it. So I'm not technically dead, but I'm not alive either. I am undead and there's no banishing me. And Drake's like, okay, cool. What does that have to do with the necklace? And she's like, it's my necklace. I'm the one who bought it for my beloved, my Pauline, the last woman I loved before I was put into such an untimely state. And it turns out that Pauline's mother was actually the witch because she didn't like that Pauline was getting with such a rascal, such someone with such suave and debonair that could have all these other women. So she forced the end of that relationship prematurely. And so he's like, yeah, I had those jewels in my hand when I died, and she declared them stolen, and they were put in a vault forever, and now I guess they just showed up again. But no, they were a gift from me to my true love, and I just wanted to have them again. And then he uses his he's got little spider legs that come out of his back. He used one of those to splash a drink onto Corrigan and push Drake away, just like, there you go, you have your confession. Now I'm going to take the necklace back and I'm out of here. And turns out, they mentioned earlier on, the whole reason that they knew he'd be on this train is that they dropped the mention of the woman, Miss Weir, is where she's located, where she's being held up in the hospital. And they figured that a guy like Craddock wasn't going to take a plane. He was going to take a train. So they just picked out the next train that was going there and knew he'd be on it. So he flies out through the top of the train. Corrigan is once again holding back the Spectre like, oh, it's going to happen this time for real. You get him off the train. Get them as far off the train as possible to save these people. So Drake climbs up on top, starts wrestling with Braddock. Inside the train, Corrigan stumbles out towards an exit and just kind of throws himself off, trying to get himself away from the innocent people. Braddock looks back and sees a glowing blue Corrigan that then explodes, and he's like, did that guy just explode? What the hell is this thing? And that's when Drake gets the drop on him. They start wrestling for the necklace. They dodge over and under a bridge. The necklace gets thrown off of the train, to which Braddock just throws himself off as well, because of course he's fine with it. Drake has to more slowly get down off the train, but she follows suit. They do end up finding them pretty much simultaneously and start wrestling over it in a nearby field. Braddock is getting more and more demonic looking. He's turning more and more monstrous. And he's like, no, give it to me. It's all I have left. I'm not a monster, but without them, that's all I am. Please don't make me hurt you. And all this while the Spectre's just coming out. He's ready to fight. He's throwing lightning bolts between the two of them. And as they start wrestling, Braddock starts laying down the moves again. And what was it? Drake is like, hey, look, you already had these. Why didn't you just take it and run? Why were you trying to go back to that woman? And he's like, why did you give me them back at the beginning? And he's like, oh, well, maybe it's because you remind me of somebody that I once loved. And she's like, what? No. And then they lean in and they share a kiss. That's one. And then he's like, well, all right, he's got me there. And before they can share the second kiss again, the tears of Eurydice get lifted up into the sky. Spectre grabs hold of them, and he's just like, all right, you suck. I don't like you. Bam. And he just evaporates Gentleman Ghost into nothing, along with the necklace. So some time passes, Corrigan comes back too, and Drake's like, hey, yeah, Spectre took care of him. He's gone. He issued his judgment. And Corrigan's like, you were in the presence of the Spectre and you're not dead, so I guess that makes you a good person. Actually 100% good. That's crazy. So at that point, Drake's looking all sad, looking back, because it was mentioned earlier on that the poison, the taking the breath thing, it's temporary. It's just kind of a heartbrokenness sort of thing. It's a grief sort of thing. It's not actually going to cause you to be killed. But Drake looks back super sad, and she basically says to Corrigan he didn't deserve to die. And he's like, what, Braddock? I mean, yeah, it was a sad story and all, but that was over 100 years ago, and he's been kind of a dick since then. So don't let it get to you. Just forget about him. He won't be back. And you see Drake just touch her fingers to her lips, thinking, oh, what could have been? I mean, it's a solid one shot. I don't know if it doesn't quite feel like, I don't know, annual worthy to me. I don't know how best to describe it. It feels annual worthy only in so much as it doesn't feel like it ties into any of the stuff that is going on in the main book. That has a very clear order of things as it's happening. This feels like a complete sidestep over to something else. And in that way, it's skippable, but at the same time, I like the characterization. I think I now learned a lot more about Drake than I knew about going into it. The fact that she's been in a relationship for almost a year with this guy, and his name, his occupation, all that. None of that. I thought she was absolutely a loner. That's insane to me that we have all this extra stuff. So yeah, no, it's honestly a good read. It is just something that doesn't really fit into the main story at all. So I'm going to say this is I'll say 7.5. It's close to the 8. It's close, but I don't know. I was missing a little bit of extra oomph. There was I think it was somewhere in the second act, somewhere between the leaving to go to the train station and at the train station. There needed to be something in there just to make the character tragedy really strike a bit more. But I just wasn't quite getting it the whole way. But 7.5 still nothing to sneeze at, so solid issue. Lobo Annual Number 1, written by Cullen, Bunn, art by Robson, Rocha. So I believe it was back in the sneak peek, I might be wrong about that there was a little hint that Lobo was going to be out hunting for Sinestro. That was a thing that was in the sneak peek. But in the actual story itself, as far as I'm aware, this is being put out the week before issue 9, but it's actually issue 9 that sets it up in story. So a little bit of editing mishap, but regardless, yeah, he's looking for Sinestro. So we open up this on a planet where there's a general who's in the middle of a war. He's fighting against all these people. He seems to be very ruthless, and a yellow ring comes in and tries to put it on this guy's finger, and he's like, haha, yes, of course, I am recognized. And immediately, as it's about to land on his finger, he gets shot in the head, and we see Lobo with a sniper rifle nearby saying, it didn't look scary to me. So the ring takes off again because its candidate is deceased, and Lobo's like, all right, I've been doing this for a little while now. Trial and error. These rings move pretty fast. I got to move faster. So he calls his ship over, and it's locked onto the ring's energy signature. And we see the ship just flying after it. It puts up a containment field of some sort that traps the ring and brings it in. And Lobo has a way to store these yellow rings. He's got a good 5 or 6 of them already contained, and they're just buzzing around like crazy, trying to escape. And he's like, yeah, if I let these things out, they would tear absolute holes into my ship. There's no way I'd be able to stop it. But my goal is somebody is looking for them. I'm hoping that somebody's going to notice that all these rings are not coming back with candidates, and they're going to try to figure out what's going on. But I've been doing it for 5 or 6 rings now, and nobody has, so I might have to change up my tactics here. So we see he goes to a planet called the Urziel Pleasure Oasis, which apparently is a bunch of floating rocks, and the legend has it that it used to be a full planet, but they partied so hard that they literally destroyed the planet. And, it's just one big orgy, all the time. That's all that's going on. Eventually some robots come over and say, Mr. Lobo, our host will see you now. So Lobo has to leave the swimming pool and all the beautiful women and go to talk to whoever's in charge of this whole party. And he goes on a whole long thing about how, information brokers, they make a lot of enemies, and that's why it's good to be here, because all these people are drunk, and it's harder to be an enemy when you're being plastered all the time. So we go and we come across Zantes, who is the leader of this place, and apparently he sells information. And Zantes is like, oh, Lobo, hey, good to have you. And Lobo's coming in legitimately as a customer, not threatening or whatever. And he's like, what can I do for the whip of the Void Whisper? What's up today? And Lobo's like, you know why I'm here. And he's like, oh, you're still looking for Sinestro? So sorry. All right, well, I might be able to help you out a little bit. But before I say anything, I want you to know, perhaps the reason you haven't been able to succeed at this is that you aren't meant to succeed at this. I'm just saying, some mountains are meant to be climbed. And he's like, I'm not climbing a mountain. I'm killing a guy. That's totally different. He's like, fair enough. So he doesn't have Sinestro's location, but he does have something that Sinestro wants. So we cut over to this place called the Reaper Prison, which apparently is a prison that just is decommissioned. But this one guy just took control of it before the prisoners were freed. And now he just runs it, despite the fact that he can also just put whoever he wants in here as long as he's able to capture them. He has no oversight, and it's a fully fledged prison, so no one's able to escape. And his name is Atreides Quan. So he's going around just taunting his prisoners, and then Lobo comes in with one of the guards in a headlock with a knife against his throat, and Atreides is like, what's this all about? Why don't we handle this like gentlemen? And Lobo's like, I did try to handle it like a gentleman. I asked to speak with you kindly about some deal I could make, and then your guards tried shooting me. So I figured I needed to speak with you directly. And he's like, well, I don't make any deals, and my prisoners are mine, so I'm not going to be bargaining with my own men here. And then Lobo just cuts the guy's head off and then starts attacking Atreides. Atreides, however, shows the reason he's able to maintain this prison. He is actually a decent fighter, and he had some guns ready underneath his cloak as well that Lobo didn't see. So they ripped through his flesh, and he's like, yeah, I'll regenerate, but he knew what he was doing, because this specific type of gun hurts and takes a lot longer to regen, so I'm going to be a little bit slower, and therefore it's going to cause a bit more damages anyway. But regardless, I can take care of all this. And so he manages to take out all the other guards that are coming in very brutally, until finally he comes over to Atreides and literally just cuts his head off. However, seemingly Atreides can survive that, so he just yells at him saying stay away from my prisoners, they're mine, I got them fair and square. So it turns out the reason that Lobo's here is that he's here for one of the prisoners, or I should say a group of the prisoners, a bunch of Korrigarians, who over in Sinestro's book, he has been trying to save the Korrigarians. They are his people, and they have kind of been scattered to the winds ever since their planet was destroyed. But Sinestro's starting up a new planet, and he's trying to get all of his people back. So Lobo comes in, he finds the core guy and is just like, all right, on your feet, everybody, let's go, you're coming with me. And one of the guys stands up being like, if you're going to put us into servitude, I'll fight you. I'll put up my dukes right here and now, and I'm not going to let you do that, not to my people again. And Lobo's like, okay, you're the one then. And we then cut to him being dangled out the back of a spaceship in a spacesuit as they're flying through space, with him just screaming wildly. Because he's literally supposed to be bait. That's literally all it was there for. So at that point, there's a big explosion, seemingly out in space, but then very much more quickly on his ship. Lobo's like, well, that didn't take long. Better get out there and talk to them. But before you can say anything, giant yellow construct, like claws, just tear through his ship. He's sucked out through into space, and he sees 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different yellow lanterns there, all ready to attack. And they're like the main bunch as well, except not Sinestro. To which point Lobo says, well, that makes all of this useless. Crap. And so he's ready. He's like, okay, I've done my research. I know each of them. I know how they fight, but like, they fight hard. And we see him basically get torn apart by all the different Yellow Lantern constructs. The only one he doesn't recognize is Soranik, who is Sinestro's daughter, and has recently been turned into a Yellow Lantern, so there were no files on her as of yet. But no, Lobo just gets sliced, he gets diced, but nobody seems to recognize him. No one knows that he's Lobo, and therefore don't know his power set of regeneration. So we have all the Korrigarians are rescued by Soranik, and just like, oh god, you guys went so brutal with him. Look at him, he's all torn up into shreds. Can you just shoot him with a laser? And it's just like, hey, don't look at any of us individually. That was a group effort. So everyone flies away, and they're saying, all right, let's get back to New Korrigar. Sinestro's waiting for us. And Lobo starts regenerating and gets himself put back together, and just like, yeah, if they knew me, they'd know that I regenerate, so it doesn't do me any good to fight them, but I did put some trackers on them, so I know exactly where New Korrigar is, and therefore exactly where Sinestro is. Also, apparently he has a regenerating spaceship as well. Sure, new tech. He just decided to add that on there. He's like, yeah, I thought that would be something that would fit in quite well with me. So he follows it over. It's a planet that was once known as Necropolis, since been co-opted to the new home of the Korrigarians. So he lands on the far side of the planet, and he's like, all right, everyone in the Sinestro Corps thinks I'm dead. I'll use that to my advantage. I'll come in and I'll be a ghost. And so he loads up in pretty much straight up 90s tactical gear here. So many pouches, so many knives. And he's like, I'm going to go in quiet, without a trace, and I'm not going to cause any casualties except for my one target, Sinestro. And if anything goes wrong, I'll just kill everybody on the planet. So we cut over to a Korrigarian who's speaking to all the other ones, kind of as like a priest sort of role, saying like, oh, everyone come together here, we can start anew, we can renew our people here on New Korrigar. And one of the Korrigarians like, but Sinestro's in charge and he sucks. I literally left Korrigar because Sinestro sucked so hard. And he's like, I know it's not ideal, but this time can be different. He's embraced as being the protector of his people rather than a straight up Nazi. So like, maybe we can just try to look on the bright side things here. And then people point out like, he's getting weapons. He's starting a war. He doesn't care about us. He wants to take over the universe. And the preacher's just like trying to like hold things together. Just like, it's a test. But without Sinestro's guiding hand, we could even rebuild our society on our own. To which point Lobo overhears all this and then is blinded by a yellow light, where Sinestro comes in saying like, they can't last without me. Like, let's be clear about that. I am always present. And Lobo is immediately just like, well, I'm not wasting time. Just starts shooting at him, starts going at him, attacking as best he can. He talks about like, I'm sure Sinestro expected me to like beg for mercy or whatever, but I read the files. Sinestro doesn't do mercy, so I'm instead going in with everything I got. We see he makes a construct, knocks Lobo dead on the ground, and he's like, oh yes, I know you, the deadliest assassin in the universe, Lobo. I've looked forward to meeting you. And Lobo's like, no one's ever looked forward to meeting me before. And Sinestro's like, oh, well, I mean, you're not that impressive, so I hope this wasn't an exercise in waste. And Lobo manages to slice through a couple of the constructs. Sinestro, just for the hell of it, makes a Lobo construct just to taunt him. Lobo has absolutely no problem cutting off the construct's head, and then he pulls out a special weapon from his belt, which apparently is an energy siphon that hovers around Sinestro and starts taking out his his Yellow Lantern energy, but not all of it. Still enough for him to put up a little bit of a fight, but it's enough to drain it quite significantly in order to make the fight a bit more even in terms of physical instead of just fighting against constructs. And Sinestro is not up for melee fighting, and Lobo points that out. He's like, he wasn't looking for a brawl, his shields are down, and I'm just going to start laying the smack down. And he just hops on top of Sinestro, starts throwing lefts and rights. And he's like, I can't help but notice there's a bunch of yellow lanterns floating in the sky, but nobody's doing anything. It's almost like they want me to do this, or they have been ordered to stand down. And as soon as he realizes that, Sinestro says, all right, okay, cancel the contract, password, blah, blah, blah. And the contract just gets canceled. The one on Sinestro's name. It's just, if Lobo's little headset says, ding, you get your money. Don't worry about it. Contract canceled. And Lobo's like, I'm sorry, hold on, what was that? Sinestro's like, yeah, I took out a contract on myself and had you take it because I wanted to test you. I wanted to see how resourceful you were against ring wielders, because that's not something that everyone can fight against. And Lobo's like, okay, so what were you trying to prove then? And Sinestro and all of his corps just standing there saying like, I did this because I want to retain your services. Sinestro Corps is about to make some pretty big plays, and we have a bunch of enemies. I'd like you to destroy those enemies on my behalf. And we see he shows a bunch of different colored rings floating in like a little bubble to say, everybody who's not a Yellow Lantern is about to go bye-bye. And that's the issue. That's where we leave off. No, I mean, it's I know that a lot of this story that's upcoming here is focused on this crossover between Sinestro and Lobo, so he is going to be connected for, I think, the rest of the Lobo series, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. Maybe there's a bit at the end that isn't, but no, it's a good direction for him, honestly. I think that with the Green Lanterns being off the board, because for anyone who's not listening to Green Lantern series, they were just kind of all mysteriously teleported away. That no Green Lanterns left anywhere. I think that it makes more sense to be able to do this interplay of DC titles with like Sinestro and the Sinestro Corps, bringing in the only other spacefaring title currently, which is Lobo. So it works from a level on that perspective. And of course, I think Cullen Bunn writes both series, so doubly easy for him to be able to mix those two together and make the plot make sense. So no, I'm down with it. The only thing that I think is a bit weird is Sinestro probably wouldn't be the type in my eyes to say, I need a bounty hunter or an assassin, or however you want to say it. I feel like it should, like no, I'll do it myself. I'm goddamn Sinestro. So I still think this is a decent issue. I like what it's setting up there. Again, bit of editorial mishap where the setup to this issue wasn't actually published until next week, but regardless, I'd say it's still, at the very least, a 7.5. I really didn't mind reading this one. It felt like a natural extension of like, okay, this is something Sinestro would do in terms of like, if he wanted to hire somebody, he would absolutely do this pretentious thing of like, I know you're not going to be able to kill me, so I'm going to put a contract on my head to get you to try to kill me and just see how close you get. It works absolutely for the character. So yeah, 7.5. And that's it. That is all the comics put out by DC Comics this July 29th, 2015. And I gotta tell you, the only thing that is keeping my eyes open right now is the very real acknowledgement of the fact that if I close them for even half a second, the very next sound you'll hear is me face planting right into this desk here. So let's go ahead and wrap this episode up before that becomes a reality. So next week, turns out, DC has decided to be doubly kind to me because they also have only published 7 comics. I don't know who's doing the scheduling over there and front-loading or back-loading things in such a horrible way, but this part of it's nice, so thank you. So coming out next week, we have, in alphabetical order, Batmite, Batman Beyond, Detective Comics, Green Lantern, Lobo, Midnighter, and Omega Men. For anyone who wasn't checking out Omega Men out of that list there, that is far and away my favorite book, so be sure to check that one out. Midnighter's good, Lobo, I mean, we just talked about Lobo Annual, so you should know how that one is from that point, and everything else is kind of a big old whatever. But still check it out, because it's going to be super hypercritical to things. Anyway, if you have any comments on any of the comics I talked about this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and hit them up in the comment section down below the YouTube video if that's how you're watching it. But if you were listening to this video, or sorry, rephrase, if you're listening to the audio feed, there we go. We have a show notes description section, and in that you can find links to a Patreon, a subreddit, a Discord. I mean, probably. To be fair, I've been saying that for about 6 months now, and I don't think I've ever checked that those links are in there. But if they are, go ahead and click them and leave some words, because I read most all of those. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for checking out today's episode. Be sure to tune in next time. Leave some positive interactions, do the things and all the other stuff. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.